Hello and welcome everybody, this is Roland Hartmann from graphicinmotion.com and I'm back with another tutorial for HeliumX.tv. In this tutorial I will show you how to create this really cool Earth setup here that we have here. So it's kind of this futuristic interface design. And we will use only After Effects and the Helium plugin to create this setup. And it looks really complex, but it's actually really easy to do. So let's jump right into After Effects and let's get started. So in After Effects, I already prepared a scene and it's a really simple setup. So you see that I have a background element here just with a gradient, then a slightly other masked background element. Then I have the smoke texture in here to add a little bit of detail and some color correction. And my setup with two lights. So these are 2 point lights with different colors. And of course a camera and the orbit null of my camera. I also have some textures already in here. So this is a specular map for the Earth, and then a bump map and a light map. And this is everything that we need to get started. If you want to follow along the tutorial, you can download the project file from the HeliumX.tv website. Now let's get started. Let's create a new layer and call this our Helium Earth. Let's make sure that it is above my background, but beneath my color correction, and let's add in our helium effect by going to Effect, Helium, and then choose Add Helium Effects. If you're not familiar yet with helium, then I would recommend that you watch my previous tutorials. I made a basic introduction tutorial and a bit more advanced tutorial, and this time we will take a look at some new features that were added with the latest release of helium. So first of all, I want to add a sphere. So we'll just type in sphere here, but I have to type it in the right way, of course, sphere. And you see immediately it will show me all the options that I have. And in my case, I want to use this high resolution primitive sphere and apply it to my scene. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And now I want to add in our Earth material. To do that, I want to create a custom material so that I'm able to assign some textures. If you want to add a standard material, you can simply click Edit and browse the materials, but I want to add a custom material. And to do that, I click this plus icon and then I just type in here material, and I will use this create here to create my custom material. Now I already pre-composed my textures and put them in here as compositions. They are invisible here. And now I can use them in Helium. So first of all, let's apply the roughness map. So this is, in this case, it's my specular map. And you see already something is happening in here already. Then I want to use my bump map. And this is, of course, my bump map. Make sure if it is a grayscale map that you are using, that you click this little checkbox here. The other maps that work are these normal maps, these purple bluish ones. But in this case, we have a grayscale map, so make sure to click this, and then we can increase the bump amount to something like 100, and you see it's already showing us the mountains and the coasts here very nicely. Last but not least, I want to add an emissive texture, and in this case I use these Earth lights and then set this to, let's see, maybe 75 or maybe even 100, and then we have this cool looking Earth, night Earth globe here. Okay, perfect. Now let's rename this. Let's stay organized. Let's put in Earth here. And I also want to rename my null. And there's a cool little feature now that was added to Helium. And this is this little icon here. And if you click this icon on the Helium layer here, on the effect, then After Effects will automatically choose the assigned control null. And with the control null, you can position and you can rotate your item. So if I rotate this now, you see that my Earth is rotating. By the way, if you have problems with the performance in your viewport, because maybe you don't have a very strong computer or your scene is very complex, then you can go to the settings here. So this little cogwheel icon here, and change this here to medium. This will speed up your viewport performance. And you could also choose half resolution if it's necessary. But in my case, the scene is not that complex, so it's not really necessary. I will just leave it on the high values. We will not move the objects around a lot here. So let's rename this Earth as well, so that I know what I'm choosing here or what I'm doing. And let's drag this down right here. Now let's add in these abstract elements. I had this really nice network that looks a little bit like a plexus network, and we can also create this with Helium in a really simple way. So first of all, I want this to be on a separate layer. So I will create a new solid and I will call it my Helium network. And now I will put this on top here for now, and again add in my Helium effects. And in this case, I will use one of these presets. So browse the wireframe presets, and let's choose this sphere wireframe. Now the sphere wireframe is cool, but you see I do not like the resolution of this sphere. Let me quickly solo this so that we can see it a little bit better. I want to have an icosahedron distribution of points, and actually there is an icosahedron sphere in Helium, but it's not that one here, not that primitive, so let's delete that. And let's add in something else, and we will add in one of these new presets here, these abstracts. So let's browse these and let's choose the blob and apply it. And now make sure that the wireframe is under the abstract. And this abstract now looks already pretty cool, but what it is essentially is an icosahedron sphere that is just displaced by a noise. So if we go now to our amount of distribution and reduce this down to maybe 50, and you see, oh yeah, this is a sphere. And if we reduce the noise scale maybe to 60, we get something like this. Now, of course, the resolution is way too high, but fortunately you can change that pretty easily by going into the properties of our abstract and then just reducing the quality. So if I set this down to 100, you will see, bang, we have a really cool network here. So like a plexus network, and this is also animating over time. And to change the speed here, you can change this amount, and let's set this maybe to something lower so that it animates slower. Let's see how fast this animates now. Yeah, that's nice. I think this works for my setup. Another feature that I really like on this wireframe here, first of all, you can of course change the edge size and the vertices size, and I think the vertices are a little bit too big, so I changed this down to 125. The vertices are of course these little spheres. You can now assign a material, so let's assign a material, and I could use this additive material, for example, and apply that to my scene. And now you can also colorize these edges and these spheres if you want. But in my case, it's not necessary. The coloring is actually done by the lights here, so I already have some colors in here. Okay, so another option that you have is this chance, and this is also very interesting. If you set this chance to a lower value, like 50, then you will see we lose some of these spheres, and I think that this creates really a nice abstract network. So maybe let's make it a little bit more, in this case 60, but this is really cool. So I really like that. It's not that regular anymore, and it looks really good. It's animating. So this is perfect. Now, if I unhide all my other layers or unsolo, then you see now my network is here and it's good, okay, but it is not wrapping around my Earth. It is actually laying just on top of it. And this is, we already had this in previous tutorials. We need to do a little trick here. So first of all, let's go to our Helium Earth layer, which will be our main layer where I bring everything together. And let's add in another Helium effect, and this is actually called the composition effect. So if we put in comp here, this will automatically appear in the search here. It's called Helium setup from other layer or composition. Apply it, and now we specify our layer, which we want to integrate in this 3D space of our Earth. Choose network. And now if we turn off this layer, you see that now our network is really nicely wrapping around my Earth. Here and there, one of the vertices is disappearing inside my sphere, so maybe I should just go to my amount here and turn this down a little bit. Let's say 30 maybe. And if this does not update immediately, this has to do with the cache, so just move your time indicator to another point in your timeline and this should update. And I think that this is perfect for now. Okay, you see now we have a complex network around our Earth. Now let's add in some other cool elements, and therefore I will again use another layer. So let's create another solid and call this Helium Abstracts, because I want to play around a little bit more with these new abstract presets. So solo this for a moment and let's go to Effect, Helium Effects, and I want to use another blob. So let's browse and let's apply the blob here. Now, these blobs are really cool. So I show you something. If you just edit this and choose, you have a bunch of presets here. That's also interesting. So you can change the shapes, you can change the presets. So play around with that. It's really powerful and you can really do a lot of cool things with that. But I also really love if you add, for example, an additive material to that, because you see what this does. And now additive material preset, you already have your new iPhone background. So render it out and you're done. But this is not what we want, but I think it's a cool effect. But I want to create something like more of a sphere shape to add to my Earth. So let's go in here and let's start with a size maybe of 350. Then we will reduce the amount again to something like 50 and reduce the noise scale to 80. Let's see what this does. And I think that this looks pretty good. Now let's just duplicate this abstract, create another one. Let's make it a bit bigger. Offset this noise a little bit by just changing the offset value here, and maybe change the settings, noise scale 90 and amount maybe 55, just to have some variation in here. And I do one more because it's really funny. And let's make this again a bit bigger. And again, maybe the amount like 45, offset it even further, and noise scale, let's see. Yeah, let's make this a bit bigger, like 120. Now I have 3 of these, and you see these are animating nicely. Let's see whether the animation is good or too fast. Oh, this is nice. This is really cool. Good. So if I want to change the opacity now, because for my taste they're a little bit too opaque, and through this additive material they are creating these really, really bright spots. But you know, there is no option here to change the material opacity. If you want to do that, go to the properties, and beside this material button here you have this icon, so this box with an arrow, and let's click that, and then Helium will extract the additive material. So actually, let me choose another preset. I want to use an X-ray preset. I apply that and now click this button, because then we have access to our X-ray material. It doesn't make much difference, but I think in this case it looks a little bit better. And now I have the options here for X-ray. You see now I can just play with this. And now it's actually exactly the same as the additive material, but if you set this to 100, then it gets some kind of Fresnel effect, you know. And now we can change the opacity. So if I lower the opacity now, you see that the effect gets a little bit more subtle. And then you have this option to mix the model opacity. And this makes it a little bit more additive, I guess. Or you see that now these get a little bit more additive again. Let's set this to a value of 5. And let's set this to maybe 45 for now. Oops, 45. OK. Now, we have to bring this also to my Earth. So let's make this invisible for a moment. Select my Earth again, and we can just duplicate this helium comp here and just select my abstracts. And they should appear. Let's move our time indicator here, and now you see they are visible. Let me do one more thing. My Earth is now set to normal, but actually for this setup I like it to be in another blend mode, and I think I use lighter color. This blends it in a little bit nicer, and if I take a look at that, I also see that my abstracts are maybe still too opaque. So let's go to the abstracts again in this material that we created, maybe lower this down to 30, 35, something like that. If it does not update immediately, then just move your time indicator. And now you see, it looks a little bit more subtle. I actually turn this down even to 25. And I really like this look. This is really good. Now we only have to add 3 more very simple items to finish our setup. And therefore I go to my Helium Earth layer again and click the plus icon. And I will type in here torus, because I want to add a high resolution torus. Let's go into the settings. Let's make it 450 wide. Let's make it 2 and the radius. And here we have the torus. Let's offset this a little bit. So let's do some rotation here, something like that maybe. That's okay. Now let's create a second torus. So let's go back to our Earth, just duplicate this torus, Control D. Let's create a new null for this one. So let's click create null, because otherwise this is still assigned to the same null. So you can also do that. You can assign multiple objects to one control null. That can be very handy in some cases, but in this case I want to have this on a separate null because I want to animate it or position it in another angle. So I will just create a new null, and you see now I have a null that is accordingly named to my object, which is also pretty good. And now I can offset this another direction, and I have my two toruses that I can now animate if I want. And now I only have to add in two more elements, and we are finished with this setup. So let's add in two more primitives. Let's use this browse function again. Let's add in a high resolution sphere, apply it, come down here and set the size to, I don't even remember what I had, I think 550. Let's take a look. And everything disappears. Let's go to edit, and let's also add in an additive material here. And that looks really good. And now let's duplicate the sphere and set it to 650. And you see now we are done, and we have exactly the same setup as I had in my preview. Of course, you can animate these elements now. This is pretty simple. You see we have our Earth null. Let's take all of these nulls and drag them down to my helium layer here. You can of course go to the rotation here, and by alt clicking the stopwatch we can add a little expression, time times 15 maybe. This will add a simple rotation to our world. If you want these other elements to follow, for example our abstract network, which of course I did not name, so in this case of course we have this option now to go in here and just click here, then we know, okay, this is my network, so let's call it network, and also link the rotation here. So just link these values. Now they are rotating together. And actually they are not rotating together because I probably, oh yeah, of course, I linked it to the other abstract. That's also fine. They should definitely rotate as well, but I have to do this one here. Sorry, just messed this up. Yeah, so this is not my network. These are my abstract blobs. You see, I got lost because again I did not name my nulls. Now I have my network here, and I will just also link this to my Earth rotation. And now all of my elements are nicely animating with my Earth. If I want to add some quick animation to my torus, then I can go in here and also type in value plus time times, let's say, 20, and we can just copy this expression and put it in here, second torus, and now this should also animate. And we have this nice animating Earth. And actually I have to put this on another axis, I think. Then it should animate. Let's see, let's put it on all two axes. Like so. And now my toruses should also animate around my Earth. Perfect. Now let me quickly show you what my color correction does, because if I turn it off, of course the look will be a little bit different. You see that yeah, it's a little bit darker, so I added in some Volumetric color effect and some glow effects here. So just that you wonder if you're building this and you don't have the color correction in, that it looks a little bit different. But if you take a look at the project that you can download from heliumx.tv, then you can take a look at my color correcting setup. It's basically just increasing the exposure a bit, increasing the contrast a little bit, and then adding some glows. That's it, what's going on here. Now, as a final step of this setup, let me add in a volumetric light. And to do that, we go to our Helium Earth layer and again, click our plus icon here. And then we can just type in here volume, and you see we get this volumetric light. If you don't use the search, you can find it in the tools here, browse, and here is the volumetric light, and apply this effect. Now by default, yeah, it's a little bit too strong, and it also does not really know which lights to take into account. So let's set this up correctly. First of all, let's reduce the amount to a very low number. In this case, I set it to 2. And then we go to this start with option here, and we edit this. And you see that I called one of my lights V light for volumetric. So if you put in now a V here, you will see that now only this light is taken into account. And this looks already way better, but of course still not good. And what you can do now is you can go to edit and choose one of these presets. And I think that I choose volumetric preset number 5. Let's apply that. Yeah, this creates this nice shine. This is exactly what I wanted. Now you basically just have to reduce the decay, and this is the amount how far this volumetric light shines. And I think that this looks actually pretty good in this case. So 12, and maybe we can increase the intensity a little bit. If we set this to 5, you see that it's quite bright and we get this nice shines in here. But in this case, I will really make it subtle, just a subtle effect that we get some light rays into our scene quickly. So therefore you can use the volumetric light. Okay, so this is it with this tutorial. I hope that you learned something new and that you saw how cool this plugin can be and how really quickly and easily you can achieve a very complex looking setup like this. I thank you very much for watching. Until the next time, goodbye.